The first domino of the Kansas basketball offseason falls as the Jayhawks land commitment from guard out of Florida, Riley Kugel.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here. I'm with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.
I'm Keegan Russell, and this is the KC Sports Authority podcast. You can listen to the podcast over on Spotify. You can also check us out right here on our YouTube channel, where you can like and subscribe to the show. And we appreciate all of you that have subscribed so far and have been trekking along with us the last couple of years. Thank you so much. If you are new to the show, however, welcome and hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to talk some Kansas basketball. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button below here. We are on our way to 500 subscribers, and we are getting closer and closer by the day, and you can help get us there, of course. So let's talk some Kansas basketball as it is the offseason, about a week and a half after the disappointing loss to Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament. Finally have a little bit of traction going here with the addition of Riley Kugel in the transfer portal, which of course I'll get into, as well as some of the other names that they're looking at currently. But a couple things so far. After the first week and a half, there are still lots of questions as far as who's back and who's going to leave. A lot of roster questions. There's been really nothing on the Hunter Dickinson side. There's been a couple, maybe cryptic tweaks out there that people think might indicate that he's leaving. But there's really been nothing from his camp, nothing from Bill Self and his team about Hunter Dickinson on if he's going to come back, if he's going to use his last year somewhere else, go play overseas. Not really sure there. So we're still kind of waiting to hear what happens with him, which of course will impact a lot of what's still coming this offseason as far as other guys that they could get in the transfer portal and go after. We also don't know anything about Johnny Furphy yet. He's still up in the air. Should he stay? Should he go? NBA draft, obviously we know that he jumped up the draft boards pretty quickly throughout the season as far as a lottery pick, as low as a mid to end of first round. Obviously he kind of tailed off there towards the end of the year and kind of struggled to finish. Still a lot of questions there. Does he come back? Does he go ahead and join the draft, which is a weaker draft class, especially his position? He'd be one of the better shooters in this draft. So we're still waiting on word for that. KJ Adams, hasn't said anything other than I anticipate him being back. El Marco, nothing there. Jamare, nothing. So still a lot of questions on that end of guys that are currently on the roster. Even a guy like Zach Clements, does he stick around as one of the bench big men that could find a spot in rotation? Does he go elsewhere? A lot of things, and we're going to try and cover all that over the next couple of weeks as things happen. But today I want to dive into Riley Kugel. That is the guard out of Florida, 6'5", 207-pound guard, wing-type player. Who is he? What can KU fans look forward to about him? How can he impact this program this upcoming year? And, what kind of spot can he fill in the rotation? And how does that impact some of the other targets that we could see? So Riley Kugel, again, 6'5", guard, transfer out of Florida, spent the first 2 seasons of his career down there in Florida. High potential scorer. He's a 3-level scoring threat. Pretty athletic for his position. Not the best ball handler, but he's a guy that is looking to get his shot up anytime possible, and he will very quickly jump into this team as a shot creator, a shot maker, as well as a guy that can look to get his bucket in transition, attack the paint. So it kind of does a lot of the multi-level scoring options that you need out of a 2-guard or a 3-guard in this lineup alongside a guy like DeJuan. Spent 2 seasons at Florida. Like I said, his career averages 9.5 points across those 2 years, about 42% from the floor, 1.2 assists, 34% from the three-point line, only 68% from the free throw line. 34% from the three-point line, 68% from the free throw line, and about 3.2 rebounds per game. But he's only doing that on about 23 minutes a game. Each season, he's spent time coming off the bench as well as starting. The end of his freshman season in SEC play, I think he averaged like 17 points a game down the stretch. So he's certainly a guy that is more than capable of putting up big numbers. The stat line doesn't really show that much. The box scores may not show that he's going to do that. Only comes in as the number 42 ranked transfer in the transfer class this year. So KU fans might be wondering, why should we even be getting excited about a guy that is way down the line in comparisons to those like Zeke Mayo that we'll talk about. Chose us over Houston, UConn, and Arizona supposedly were his final four. He's a native of Orlando, but did actually spend some time up here in Kansas City in Overland Park. And if you guys saw his commitment video, there's the cool picture of him wearing a KU shirt, which is just pretty cool because, this means he's playing for a team that he's very familiar with. And over on KUSports.com, he interviewed with Shea Wildeboer and had a couple nice little comments here. To be honest, Kansas was always my dream school growing up. I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer. Once I had the opportunity to play for Bill Self, it was a no-brainer. Kind of referencing a little bit of his time in Kansas City. He also played high school ball at Dr. Phillips High School in Orlando with former KU Jayhawk Ernest Uday, of course, the transfer that went to TCU. So the staff already has some familiarity with his game coming out of high school, knew a little bit about him. So that's kind of a quick overview on Riley Kugel. But what can he do for this team next year with the way it's currently constructed? Whether Johnny Furphy is back or not, Kugel is going to immediately slide in as a scoring threat at the guard wing position, can play the 2-3, a guy that can create his own shot off the dribble. He's got a really nice quick first step, a nice little spin move if you haven't seen some of his tape yet. Really good going right, could get better going left, but a guy that can get up his shot, can find open space, can go create a shot when need be. I think he's going to be a guy, too, that when the shot clock's running down and there's nothing happening, you can give the ball to him and go look to get a bucket. So I think that's exciting there. I think he will almost immediately be our best shooter on the team, or best capable shooter, at least in this lineup, depending on if Furphy's back. This is a KU team last year that had 3 guys shoot over 100 threes, but barely over 100. And Kugel himself has shot over 100 threes coming off the bench. So he will ultimately and instantaneously slide in as one of our top 3-point shooting threats, a guy that can space the floor on the wing, a guy that the defense has to pay attention to because of that athleticism. Seen a couple fun comparisons on Riley Kugel. So for you KU fans, just kind of think about who he could look like, who he could play like, and how he could fit in. There's 3 former Jayhawks I'm thinking of that he kind of resembles a little bit of their game. Coming in as a junior this year. He's athletic like a Wayne Selden, not quite as strong and physically strong as Wayne Selden was because he had about 20 pounds more in his frame, with Kugel only being about 205 pounds. But Wayne Selden, developed his first 2 years, and then that third year as a junior was kind of that aggressive go-getter guy, stepped up his game, looked to find an open shot, created shots off the dribble. So he's got a little bit of that. I think he's also got a lot of Malik Newman in him, a guy that, again, highly recruited, didn't quite pan out with the situation he was in Mississippi State, transfers to KU, sits out a year, and then took a little bit to get going. But once he got going, we saw how well he fit in this offense instantly. Just like Malik, a guy that can create his own shot in ISO, a guy who can be a spot-up jumper, spot-up three-point shooter, pick and pop kind of guy. A guy that can also attack the basket when need be and get a bucket there. So I think there's a lot of resemblances with Malik Newman. And then another guy, he's similar frame. He's probably a little bit better, but also that junior year, LeGerald Vick, kind of a streaky shooter at times. He's not a tremendous three-point shooter, but he's actually shot relatively better against stronger competition. But he's kind of streaky. He can go, 5 for 7, and then he might go 1 for his next 10. Just kind of like LeGerald Vick was, had a nice little smooth jumper, similar frame, this long athletic wing, a little bit undersized for the 3-4 spot, and he needs to put on some weight. But a guy that's got that similar game to LeGerald Vick, who can kind of get his own bucket. It start off LeGerald's junior year, he was shooting from all over the court, getting buckets anywhere, attacking the paint, pull-up jumpers in the mid-range. I think there's a little bit of Riley Kugel there as well. I think this is a guy that the coaching staff is looking at as high potential. Again, you go back to that number 42 ranking next to him in the transfer portal. That kind of tells you that he's not really highly valued across the transfer portal compared to some other guards out there. And I think some of that's just because statistically, the stats don't really speak volume enough of what this guy can do. 23 minutes, like I said, is kind of what he averaged, and 9.2 points, 9.8 points per game on average between there. Would already have been KU's best off the bench threat this last year in only 23 minutes. So where does he slot? Starter is my guess right now, depending on how this team ends up. And if you up his minutes from 23 to 28 to 33, somewhere in there, does that 9.2 points turn into 14 to 17 a game? I think he's certainly capable, especially alongside Dewan. Dewan can facilitate and go back to what he does best, playing defense and facilitating the offense. And now you've got a guy that you can, I think, trust to go get a bucket when need be. So I think it'll be an interesting fit there. Certainly, though, some questions on how he will fit with the rest of the team, depending on who's back and who goes. I think he'd be a good, fit alongside Hunter if Hunter's still here, even alongside KJ. He can space the floor, attack. I think one of the things we've talked about all season this year was when KU was struggling, when they weren't hitting threes, and the defense was, crowding the paint, there was really nobody to go get a bucket. Johnny Furphy could not really create his own shot. Nick Timberlake, nothing. DeJuan Harris tried to, but wasn't effective at it. I think Kugel gives him a guy that is capable. I think there's still a lot of questions as far as what his ceiling is. Can he reach that ceiling? And can he develop? Definitely needs to get better defensively. But go watch some of his highlight tape. You can see some of those offensive moves I've talked about. Really nice, quick first step. Again, a good little spin move. He does a lot of these one-on-one ISO spin move shots that I think will be a lot of fun to watch. So I like the addition. It's a good start. Maybe not quite as exciting as a Zeke Mayo type that's out there that I'll talk about here in a minute. But Riley Kugel is the first domino to fall in the KU basketball offseason. I think he's a guy that could easily start at the 2 or the 3. He's a guy they could also have come off the bench if the right starting 5 is there. I think he's a guy that's going to be instant offense. He's going to have good energy. He's looking to prove himself. I think he's ready for a new situation, a new team, and ready to get back out there and show what he's certainly capable of. Because he just didn't get quite the run at Florida that I think he hoped for coming out of high school. So looking forward to see how he can impact this team. What other impacts can he have, though, as far as the rest of the transfer portal? Here's what we also know. KU is talking with Zeke Mayo, the former Lawrence native. He has also put his name in the NBA draft. So we're waiting to see how that goes. Played with the Jackrabbits the last couple of years. This last year comes off a really, really good season. 18.8 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game as a 2-guard, which is fantastic. And 3.5 assists on 47% shooting from the floor, 39% from 3, 83% from the free throw line. And he's actually a career 87% free throw shooter in college, which is fantastic. Zeke Mayo slides in as the number 12 transfer in the portal this year. So significantly higher than Riley Kugel, of course. A little bit, they've got some similarities as far as play style, but also a lot of differences there. Guys that could actually play together on the court at the same time. Personally, I would love to see Zeke Mayo. He went to my high school, Lawrence native. I think the fan base would be excited. Obviously, there's the questions of can he compete against top-level talent? I think he can. Just in the NCAA tournament this year against Iowa State, he still scored 19 points on 4 of 6 shooting against one of the premier defensive programs in the country, especially when it comes to the guard position. So I think he can certainly handle his own. 6'4", good size, good speed, good athleticism, great jumper, can create off the dribble, can go get his own bucket, also a decent facilitator. So it'd be nice to have that on the court alongside DeJuan, another guy that could run and facilitate the offense. So he has his unofficial visit this week. It's going on kind of right now as we speak. Probably, my guess is it'll be a while till we know what's going on with him, unless he just gets overwhelming feeling that KU is better than pursuing his NBA draft status at this point, because the draft stuff's still quite a ways away. So he's on campus this week. I think he's going to have a lot of fun. Obviously, grew up here around Lawrence and knows this program really well, and a guy that I think the fan base would certainly love to have. So he's also coming in for that visit this week. Then we switch to another spot here. Again, the big man position. Like I said, a lot of questions up in the air. Don't know what's going on with Hunter, KJ. Does Zach Clements come back? We do know Floyd Badunga is going to be here in the fall, the number 1 ranked center in this class. But as much as Hunter Dickinson was a great 20 and 10 a night kind of guy, we saw the struggles defensively. We saw how slow he was with his feet. Never really was a rim protector, and KU just really didn't have that much at all this year. So they are looking at the former Rutgers Cliff Omoruyi. I always say his name wrong because it's just a tongue twister. Omoruyi, 6'11", 240-pound center out of Rutgers. He's the number 3 overall transfer in this year's class, the number 2 center. He's the traditional defensive-minded rim runner. He's had NBA comparisons to former Jayhawk Check Diallo. Probably a little bit more skilled at this time in his career as Czech was as a freshman, but a traditional rim protector, good size, good rebounder. This last year averaged 10.4 points per game on 8.3 rebounds and 2.9 blocks. So he's going to be that lockdown defensive anchor. I think the big question with him is, if he comes to Kansas, is he comfortable coming off the bench? If Hunter comes back, is he the starter if Hunter goes? What is it that he's looking for this offseason for his final year of college eligibility? Fantastic pick and roll lob threat with his size and athleticism. He's not your traditional, butt in the paint kind of. He's going to back you down and score. He's more of that pick and roll lob threat, rim runner. Not going to get a ton of shots up because all of his shots come right there around the paint. Good offensive rebounder. He's had times where he's averaged almost 5 offensive rebounds a game for stretches. So he's a guy that's going to get in there, get missed shots and put them right back up, which is something KU definitely struggled at this last year. One of the worst offensive rebounding teams we've had. And I think just that defensive presence is something Bill Self would definitely love to see again at that 5 spot. That was something that we hoped Ernest Uday could be last year because he had the skill set and the tools for it, just didn't quite develop there. Now Cliff could be a guy that is much more experienced in that position and could come in and do some of that. So he is set to have, I think, a Zoom call this week, and then probably we'll have a visit later. I'm not sure who else he's looking at or how long he will wait. My guess is he's going to wait to do anything until he knows what's going on with Hunter Dickinson, who is probably the next big domino to fall, in my opinion. I think Furphy obviously is still out there, but there's a lot of time for him to still decide if he wants to go to the draft, but keep his eligibility or do something else. Hunter, I think, is the next big one because I think the entire landscape of how this team looks next year is completely dependent upon if Hunter is back or if Hunter goes. So we're going to still have a few more episodes kind of breaking down, should Hunter come back? What would it look like with him back? What would it look like with KJ back? Can we run it back? What would we do differently? All that. There's plenty to get into, so make sure you're staying up to date with everything we're talking about here. We'll have quite a few more of these over the oncoming weeks and discuss anything going on in the transfer portal. But we'll kind of wrap it up there. Like I said, a couple more episodes. We want to do a dive on Johnny Furphy. Should he stay? Should he go? Would he be beneficial for a second season, or is it better for him to just go ahead and throw his name into the hat for the NBA and go ahead and start that process? We'll talk about that again, talk about Hunter coming back, and then kind of look around at some of the other positions of need and see who we like to fill those. Want to do a little bit more talk on Zeke Mayo, of course, once some of his visits start coming up. So make sure you check everything out that we still have going on over here at the podcast. Again, you can listen to us on Spotify. You can also watch us right here on YouTube at KCSA Pod. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast and help us get to 500 subscribers. We're inching ever so closely, and you can help us get there. You can also, of course, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. That'll do it for this one. Until next time, we will see you guys in our next episode.